Hello everyone, welcome students to this third video of the 9th class. This is the last video of this week. Of course, I'm at your total disposal for any query, any question, any comment, any feedback you may have through Canvas. I'm at your total disposal. Please remember that you have to submit the second summary paper before today, Friday at 12 o'clock on your time zone. During this video, we are going to speak about a very important topic in business, very important topic in strategic management. We are going to speak about failure. Well, I cannot understand why if you are a doctor, you have to study life and death. If you are a lawyer, you have to study how to communicate bad news to your clients. But if you are studying business, failure is not a big topic. It's a lot of time is not tough at all. So I think that teach failure is almost as important as teach success in business. Okay, so during this video we are gonna give a couple of advices, a couple of tips about failure, about companies in crisis, and about what happens if you do not have success in businesses. To start this video about failure, I would like to share with you this brief video about my son trying to climb some boxes, and he did it at the end at his third try, his third attempt. As you have seen, my son climbed the 3 boxes to the third. He had a couple of attempts before in which he failed and nothing happened. It's natural, it's life. So we have to be really aware that you can see in the picture, failure is not the opposite of success, it is part of the success. I think that you as an Americans have a very deep culture of failure that we have here in Europe, and particularly here in Spain. Here in Spain, we have a kind of stigma for failure. We used to appoint those who fail in business, but I think that this is not a useful theory anymore. You have to be aware that it's perfectly usual that you fail in business, and maybe in the future you are gonna success. Okay, under our legal systems, to fail in business, to have a lot of debts is not a crime, so you're not going to go to jail or whatever, and you can start it again. Here in Spain we have a relatively new law called the Second Opportunity Law, which allows you to start from zero with zero debts, and I think that you in the United States have more or less the same similar system. And now we are going to speak about the limited liability in companies. So we do not have to worry at all about failure. Okay, we have to face it, and maybe it's the most typical phenomenon in business. Not in every business that you start are gonna success, of course. You just have to learn about your mistakes and be natural about failure. Of course, the first thing that we have to take in account when speaking about failure is the limited liability. And the limited liability, as you are perfectly aware of, means that the creditors of your company, if you fail, cannot go against your assets. Okay, your assets are perfectly protected, and if you have a paper, if you have a company legally created, you have limited liability. This is one of the reasons why capitalism success during the 19th century and the 20th century, because the partners, the shareholders, were able to protect their own assets from the company. The company were another person, in this case a legal person, And through this legal mechanism, the creditors cannot go in against your assets. This is the general rule, okay? We can define the limited liability as a business structure in which the owners or members have limited liability with respect to the actions of the company. A limited liability company offers the members the benefit of personal liability protection, meaning that the business liability cannot be recovered from the personal assets of the owners. So it's like magic. If you create a company and the company doesn't go well, if you fulfill with all legal requirements, you do not have to worry about your personal assets, okay? All of things about limited liability are advantages. You can form a company with just one member. You can have a whole company as a member of an LLC. The owners of the company are protected against the business liability of the company, and it requires very little bookkeeping. It requires financial and administrative requirements, but they are quite simple. So you have to be perfectly aware that if you fail, if your company fails, it doesn't have to mean that your personal assets will be in danger. Okay, you are not going to jeopardize your personal assets if you fulfill with all legal requirements. The general rule is that you are going to have a limited liability and you do not have to worry about your personal assets. We have thousands and thousands of companies in crisis and companies who fail. We are going to see just a video of a very promising company called WeWork and how the company failed.
It was supposed to be one of the largest IPOs of the year, but the shared office group WeWork was instead plunged into crisis after investors failed to buy into its valuation of $47 billion, or its promises of elevating the world's consciousness. The IPO was called off and the chief executive resigned. But what exactly is WeWork? Put simply, it rents out office space, decorates it in a distinctive style, and rents it out on all-inclusive deals to businesses ranging from startups to Facebook and HSBC. It's grown at a breakneck pace. In recent years, it's become the largest private tenant in Manhattan and central London. The former chief executive, Adam Neumann, previously told the FT it was about much more than office space.
A lot of times people ask me if we compete against co-working spaces or against Regus, and the answer is no. We're competing against office. We're changing the way people work. One of the ways that really differentiates us is community.
But WeWork's quick expansion came at a price. As the company grew, bankrolled by its biggest investor, SoftBank, its losses have ballooned. Last year, it reported a loss of $1.6 billion on sales of $1.8 billion.
They combine three things that when put together are very, very dangerous or difficult. When you have losses, like very big losses, when you have opacity, like you're very, very difficult to analyze because you haven't provided details, and arrogance. So when companies are difficult to analyze, then the trust of the management team becomes more important. And when investors, looked hard at this team to see if there was a team here that they could trust, I think that's when things started to unravel for this process.
Another problem for investors was the way WeWork is run. This is the business structure they submitted when they were hoping to list. It's a structure known as a UPC, which offers tax benefits to early investors. It also creates different share classes. The former chief executive, Neumann, would have had 20 times as many votes per share as ordinary shareholders. Investors were worried about his levels of control and other deals, like his decision to charge the company almost $6 million to use the word "we." After an outcry, that decision was reversed. Now, Mr. Neumann is out. The new co-chief executives have signalled a slimming down of the company, and they are selling off its private jet, which Neumann used to travel the globe and which the company bought just last year for $60 million. But some landlords still think WeWork has huge potential. Mike Hussey of London-based Alma Kantar owns one of WeWork's largest sites. He says businesses are flocking to WeWork spaces.
What WeWork have done is said, We think modern companies want something completely different. They want a fully serviced operation, the ability to locate alongside like-minded people, and we are prepared to wrap the whole thing together, provide you with space that really works for your staff, provide you with the flexibility to do what you want to do in your space, and provide you with all the support mechanisms that you need in order to occupy that space. And that is where the market, and they've stolen the march on the market, that is where the market has really changed.
The new co-chief executives will now have to make that case to investors and WeWork's worried staff. The company plans to drastically slow its expansion to avoid running out of cash. But it faces an uphill battle to show that WeWork really is at the vanguard of a real estate revolution, and not just another bloated unicorn that couldn't stand up to scrutiny.
Another very important concept to take into account when speaking about failure is bankruptcy. It's not a stigma, it's a legal procedure, and you have to be pretty aware that it's going to be the best way to protect your personal assets and yourself from any bad situation of your company. Here you have a definition, a classical definition of bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is the legal proceeding involving a person or business that is unable to repay outstanding debts. The bankruptcy process begins with a petition filed by the debtor, which is the most common, or less common by the creditors. All the debtor's assets are measured and evaluated, and the assets may be used to repay a portion of outstanding debt. Please take into account that when we speak about the debtor assets, of course, we are speaking about the company's assets, in the case that is the company who has asked for the bankruptcy. Okay. Usually, if the company goes bad, it's the company who has to declare bankruptcy. It's not very usual, at least here in Spain, that natural persons, that the owners or the shareholders declare himself or herself in bankruptcy, but it's as well an option. But just in the case that they have, for example, personal liabilities because they have signed together with the company several debts and several loans or something. But in the usual cases, is the company who has to declare bankruptcy, and you are not going to have any liability as shareholder or as an owner of the business. And we do have to be perfectly aware of your priorities when you are going through a bankruptcy proceeding, okay? And your priority as member of the board of directors shall not be corporate social responsibility, shall not be your employees, shall not be your creditors, shall not be the company's reputation. All those things are very important. All those things you have to take care of them. But the most important thing is to protect your personal assets, okay? So that the personal liability do not affect your own assets. And therefore, to declare bankruptcy, you have to fulfill, as member of the board of directors, several requirements, okay? The first one is don't wait too long to declare bankruptcy, okay? As soon as possible, as soon as you see that you are not going to be able to repay outstanding debts, you have to file bankruptcy. Here in Spain, for example, we have a term of 3 months since you are aware that you are not going to be able to repay your debts. And if you wait too much, maybe this personal liability could stop, and therefore maybe your creditors are going to be able to go against your personal assets. So it's very important that don't wait too much. Another very important thing when going to bankruptcy is do not drain the company's bank account. A lot of small and medium-sized companies drain their company's bank account before going to bankruptcy, and this is a very severe thing, and it could be even a criminal matter. Okay. Another very important thing is to not provide inaccurate incomplete or dishonest information. You have to be transparent, you have to be honest. As I told you, in our legal system, in our Roman legal system, and in your common law system, to have debts for companies or for natural person is not a crime. So nothing bad is going to happen to you, and nothing bad is going to happen to your company. But you have to be transparent, okay? Completely transparent. You do not have to provide inaccurate, incomplete, or dishonest information, because if you do so, within the procedure is gonna discover that you have been provided inaccurate information, and it's gonna have very bad consequences for you. Maybe the personal liability is going to stop as well. Another very important is that don't rack up new debt. As soon as you know that you are not going to be able to repay your outstanding debts, you have to stop to ask for new debt. Another very important thing is that do not move assets from the company to yourself or third parties. This is a criminal matter as well. You have to be very aware that you cannot move any assets from the company, from yourself or third parties. And finally, do not fail to file income tax returns. Okay, you have to be very careful with tax matters. But if you fulfill those requirements, and if you visit a good attorney, maybe you are gonna file bankruptcy, and you do not have to worry at all about the bankruptcy proceeding. If you do things well, you have to trust in personal liability protection, and therefore bankruptcy is the best way to protect your personal assets against the creditors. Of course, if we are speaking about companies in crisis, we have to speak about how to fire people. It's very important that you know the main causes of dismissal. For example, if the employee's skills do not meet the position's requirement, or if there is an inappropriate behavior, or a difficulty to adjust new processes, or a downsizing process is implemented. In case of delocalization, financial difficulties, rationalization of production process, etc. In those cases, you are going to need to dismiss people, to fire people, and I'm going to I'm going to name just a couple of tips for performing an exit interview. The first advice I could give you is that you have to be loyal, you have to be honest with natural persons, but you do not have to be loyal with legal entities. You do not have to be loyal with companies. You have to be aware that companies do not have feelings, and if things go wrong, you are going to be fired as your peers, as your bosses, or as your employees. Everybody is going to be fired if things go wrong. So you have to be pretty aware that companies do not have feeling, and you do not owe any loyalty to companies. You owe loyalty just for natural persons. It's very important that if you have to perform an exit interview, you explain the reasons of the dismissal to the employee that you are firing. It's very important that you explain him or her the situation on the company at the market, that you explain him or her the financial situation of the company, and the personal performance or the behavior of such employee. And it's very important that you ask him or her several questions. Of course, the questions that you have to ask your employee in case of an exit interview depends on if he or she is quitting the company or he or she is being fired. Okay, but here you have generic questions. Maybe the most important one is, what do we need to improve as a company? And then you have, how could we retain our talent? Why did you begin looking for a new job in case that the employee is quitting the company? What ultimately led you to accept the new position? Did you feel that you were equipped to do well your job? How would you describe the culture of your company, and etc. And it's very important that you take in account that maybe it's better to wait 1 week or 2 weeks after the employee has left the company and call her or call him by phone, and maybe in those cases he or she is more willing, more open to tell you useful tips for the company for the future. And this is all. Thank you very much. You have to take in account that failure is not a problem, okay? Failure could be a stone in the path. It could be an obstacle. You have to learn about your mistakes, and you have to learn how to go to a bankruptcy. You have to learn how to fire people, but it's very important that you protect your personal assets. And in any case, it's very important that you are not afraid about failure, okay? Thank you very much, students. I think I am pretty aware that we are living difficult times, but in any case, I hope that you enjoy your weekend, take advantage of your weekend, and I'll see you next week. I'll see you on Monday. Thank you.